Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're here. We are at the final book in the Sin series by Aletha Romig. Now, if you haven't listened to the first three books in this series, those reviews are going to be listed down below in the description section. So once you finish those, come and join us as we dive into the final book of the series, Book 4, Black Knight. We start off with our boy Van. He had a memory of leaving that damn key for Madison while he was on the phone talking to Lena. Lena, of course, was, I don't think she's dangerous, all this good stuff. She wouldn't hurt anybody. And I'm just kind of like, let's just be very clear. What other reason does she have to be there except to do some type of mischief? Like, if she just wanted to congratulate him, she could have sent a note, you know? So, the thought process that, oh, she wouldn't do anything, it's kind of like, come on. If she's there, she's traveled all that way, she's come to do some form of damage. I'm just saying. So, he calls Albert. Albert's on his way upstairs. He tells Albert make sure the gates open because he's not slowing down. So the gates are open. He gets in, runs in the house. He's going upstairs, two at a time. And they're banging on the door. No one's answering. He's like, break it down. So the dude takes out his gun, shoots off the lock, busts down the door. They see Vicky passed out with shards of glass around her. They see Margaret passed out. Same thing, glass around her. And there's no Julia. So he's like running through different places trying to find Julia. He's screaming like, where is she? He's freaking out. Albert's freaking out, but they're not finding anything. Then he thinks about the security system and how it has the body heat sensors. And so there's one body heat sensor downstairs that he can see. So he runs downstairs. He sees the cape. He yells out for Julia, but it's not Julia. It's freaking Madison. And it's so crazy because he had dreamed of this for so long, of having her come back. And then she comes back, but it's a whole nightmare. We switch to Julia. Everything is looking crazy to her. She's throwing up in the toilet. Because remember in the last book, in the last scene, when she saw Madison, she said the name Madison. And she had gone to the bathroom to try and put some water on her face. So she winds up falling down, throwing up in the toilet. Madison comes in, gives her some more to drink, but it's the champagne. And so she spits it out as soon as she puts it in her mouth. And Madison's just like, you just make things so difficult. So she pinches her nose. And of course, this makes Julia have to open her mouth. And she pours the champagne in that way and shoves her mouth closed. And then she wound up, of course, she threw that up as well. She left, and when she came back, she had a syringe. She pushes it into Julia. So then she dragged Julia through some stairs. Yeah, stairs. And then a dark room, and then nothing. And she's hoping like, I don't want to die, I want to live, I want to love. And then everything goes black. So then we switch back to Van. He's downstairs. Old girl's talking out of her mind. She's telling him that, her and Brooklyn are going to be a family. Philip could never be her father. That's why he hates you so much, talking to Van. And that's why he had me committed. And she admits to drugging Margaret because Margaret never talked to her and wasn't friendly with her the way she was with Julia. So to her, it's like she's getting what she deserves. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we remember that summer that I'm going to say summer, but those months, I think we'll just say it that way, that she lived there, she didn't have that banter with Margaret. So of course, here we go, something else that Julia has that she doesn't. So like everybody got to pay. at this point in her mind. She wanted him to admit who he loved. She told him she talked about the divorce papers. She said she couldn't get Philip to sign them, so she needs Van to pretend to be Philip one more time. And he's like, why can't Philip sign them? And she just said that he wouldn't. And that's all she said. He couldn't sign them. And she left it at that. And then she asked him, who do you love? Then they start hearing sirens. It's an ambulance coming. She's like, no, not yet. It's not ready. It's not ready. The fire trucks can't get here yet. And he's like, fire trucks? He thought he was smelling smoke, but he thought this was like in his head. She's like, no, 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 no. It hasn't been long enough. And he kept saying, what are you talking about? What hasn't been long enough? So she's trying to, he's trying to talk to her in a simple way because he can't yell at her. He's infuriated, but he can't do that because he doesn't know what's going to trigger her, you know? So he has to talk to her like he's not upset, like she hasn't done anything wrong. So then Albert comes down the stairs and she tells him, make him go away. Girl pulled out a whole gun. Okay? And so he tells Albert, like, because Albert was like, the third floor is locked and there's smoke. And so he looks at Madison. He said, what did you do? She's like, tell me who you love. He says, why don't you just give me the gun? She says, no, you answer me. Tell me who. He goes to turn. Gunshot goes off. Van feels like he's somewhere between life and death. He's having flashbacks from his childhood, being in his room, the one where he shared with Philip, and he wanted to learn the piano. His dad felt like men should just do sports. So anything outside of that, he would just try and crush it. So he would do it secretly. He was taking lessons from a woman who lived down the street. He worked and did like different odd jobs and stuff so that, he could buy a keyboard. And he's going like in and out of this memory. He sees his sister, Olivia, and then he goes back out and he's asking about Julia. He keeps saying Julia, Julia. And Olivia went and got a nurse and he's asking, where's my fiance? Where's Julia? Nobody's telling him anything. Another nurse comes in. It's a guy nurse and he's got this bandage around him. And there's a lot of beeping going on poor Van. And he's still, trying to figure out what is going on. Where is Julia? He knows he's in a hospital because Olivia said that to him. But he's like, why am I here? And so the nurse tells him that, most people that get shot at close range, they don't live to tell it. So he's realizing he got shot. Liv is asking him, what do you remember? He kind of starts to piece things together. He remembered finding Margaret and Vicky. They're okay. Their stomachs were pumped. He says, where's Julia? Why aren't you telling me about Julia? And they were like, her situation was a little bit more complicated. She didn't have massive amounts of the drug, but she did have a lot of smoke. She inhaled a lot of smoke. And so he's like, what are you not telling me? Just tell me. Where is she? Because at this point, he's going to be impatient, right? He didn't even ask about Madison or anything. Because she had said, like, do you even care about Madison? And he's like, no. He's like, she's the one that shot me. Like, why would I care about her? But you got to remember, Olivia is close to Madison. This is her brother, but she's close to Madison. Ugh, it's a mess. So he was just like, just tell me, where is she? We find out he's in Madison, Wisconsin, which is funny. But they had to airlift him because they didn't have what was necessary for him in Ashland. Um, where he got shot, messed up his intestines. He got an infection. They were able to fix it, but he's been out for like pretty much 4 days. But they needed him to be out in order for the medicine to work to clear up the infection. And it's almost gone, thankfully. So then finally she says to him, Olivia does, Julia's gone. Julia is not dead. I could have beat Olivia's ass for saying it to Van the way she did. I mean, because I thought, oh no, she's dead. What it was is that she is now back in Chicago with her parents. So while she was unconscious, her parents got her flown to Chicago hospital there. And they were trying to get a restraining order against Van. But thankfully she came to and she put a stop to that bullshit. So she parents, she doesn't really have an appetite. Her mom is like, you know, basically if no one's telling you what's going on with him, he clearly doesn't want you to know how he is. You know, he's clearing you out, right? She doesn't even know if he's alive. You know what I mean? And the mom is just like being an asshole, you know, and saying, you know, well, they released the press release, but the press release didn't really say anything. It just kind of said, you know, that he had been shot or whatever, but no more information. So she's still in contact with the Mayhans and the security team back and stuff like that. They're getting stuff squared away in Ashland. So she, of course, she's ready to go back. She tells her parents this, and her parents like, yeah, they're really gonna be able to keep you safe like they did the first time. And I'm not gonna lie, when I read that, I laughed because I was like, I mean, she's not lying. I mean, this all did happen with security there. So I mean, I don't like the mom, but you know, when you're right, you're right. You got to give it to her. She goes upstairs. She's got a text message from a new number. It's Beth saying that, you know, I know you don't really want to hear from me, but I think I have some information that could help you. Um, she doesn't say anything else to her. She just calls Vicky. And Vicky is, you know, freaking out because she's been, you know, worried about her, of course. And Julia's been doing some digging, trying to find, you know, out where he could possibly be. So she did figure out that there was a trauma center in Madison because they don't have that in Ashland, and that's probably most likely the place where he would be. And so you know, girl's making plans. She's going to see her boo. So then Madison, she says, what did she say? She says, yes, he's in Madison. Don't, you know, trust me, I see the nuance in that crap, you know. Madison, her the actual person, is in a psychiatric hospital being held. They're trying to assess if she's going to be able to stand trial. So Julia's been tossing and turning. She can't get to sleep. Around 3 o'clock, she winds up taking a shower and goes to her father's office. She's going to go ahead and get her a car. Um, she goes to her father's computer. It's locked. She put in her parents' anniversary. That didn't work. She put in her birthday. That worked. That made her smile. She saw communication from Marlon Butler saying that, you know, like time's running out, like all this type of cryptic stuff. You need to tell her and all this type of stuff, but nothing concrete. So she went through the trash because she saw he had written some stuff, her father out, some things he had written, and again, nothing's concrete. So she's just got some pieces. She's trying to put the puzzles together. She saw something from Ashley from Green Sphere, and she's just trying to again put this puzzle together. So she sent all the information to her email. They'll see she did it, but at that point she's like, I'll be gone, so it doesn't really matter. She's like, I'll figure this out later. So she's getting because her ride's outside, but then Arnold comes through the door and lets her know he sent the car away. He's like, he's the one who's going to be driving her. Now, Arnold is like 65, I think, over 65, something like that. We'll just say he's 65. Let's just do that. And he says, with the smoke, you know, inhaling that happened to her, she doesn't need to be driving by herself. He's like, so I'm going to take you. He says, besides, like, You ordered a ride, you don't know who that is. That could be anybody. You know what I mean? And she feels stupid for not thinking that way. You know, like, especially after what happened. You know, it's the idea that you're stealing fucking La La Land, you know? So we find out that he's reached out to the security team. He knows where our boy Van is, and so he's gonna take her. We switch back to Van, and he's finally been left alone, so he can make a phone call. We do find out that she did tell him that the girl wasn't dead, that she was just in Chicago. We also find out the person that's running his company right now, because he's incapacitated, is Lena Montgomery. So he calls her from the hospital phone. He doesn't have his cell phone, and she's like, um, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? And, he of course wants to know what's going on with this company. Like, have you, run my company into the ground yet? Am I bankrupt? She's like, oh no, it's the complete opposite. And then he asked her, has she talked to Julia? She said she's been trying. She said she tried to call the house. She tried to call Wade Pharmaceuticals, but no one's letting her get in touch with her. And she said to him, that's why I told you we should have been introduced. I don't know if that would have necessarily saved anything, because I think once those parents took control like that, I don't know if there was a way to really change that, with her being out. I don't think it would have changed anything. Um, he of course doesn't say anything. He hates feeling weak, and this is extremely a lot for him. There's tubes everywhere. He's trying to move it, setting off alarms. The nurses come in. He of course tries to throw his money around. He's like, can't you all just care for me in my home? I'll double, triple your salary. And they're like, can you do that for the next 20 years? You know? They're like, you need to rest. Get yourself together so that way you can walk out of here. But for him, it's just the idea of feeling weak, and he hates it. So he wants to be gone. Um, he feels like, when he goes after those companies, when he goes after anything he wants, he's the predator. And now he feels like the prey, and that feeling does not work for our boy Vance at all. Poor Van has got to today 5 times a day. He's done it twice already this day, and he's in pain. But he's got to work himself up. It's gonna take time, but unfortunately with him, he's ready to go back to Ashland like yesterday. So there, I think they told him he can't leave until he can poop. What else? Walk, poop, and pit, something like that. So until he's able to do that all on his own, he's not gonna be able to leave. So it's like, you might as well just get yourself together, do what needs to happen so you can get your strength back up. Because complaining about it and being pissy about it is not going to change what the situation is. Um, Olivia is kind of like, your fiance has got to be either a saint or an imbecile to deal with because he's just snapping at her left and right, and she's trying to help him. So she's about had it with his ass too. Um, so then Michael comes in, and he's happy to see Michael. Michael is normalcy to him. And so he tells Olivia, give us a minute. She went, got him some coffee, and Michael had his cell phone for him. And he was like, I need to call Julia. And Michael says, I think I can do you one better. We switched to Julia. She's talking to Arnold. They had a really heartfelt moment. She thanked him so much for bringing her. He let her know how much, him and his wife loved her, and that, let, anyone stop you from flying. And he even knew that Philip wasn't banned. He could tell because he said, you, and he looks at you with pure love. He's like, and you can't fake that. So Michael texted her, and Arnold walked her up to the room, and when she came in, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Julia." She's like, "I love you." He's like, "I love you." They had this really beautiful moment. And he, of course, was like, "This is all my fault." Um, all this type of stuff. And she's like, "No, it's not your fault. She hurt you too." And I'm like, this is kind of your fault because you did leave out a lot of stuff and forgot things that you shouldn't have been forgetting. Um, you are partially to blame. I'm sorry. I am not going to absolve him of that. There's no way. Things could have been avoided. Then again, she's such a ditz, you know, and stays in La La Land. He probably would have told her, and she'd be like, "Oh, she won't hurt me." She probably would have been stupid anyway. So, but I still am not going to absolve him. Period. The end. So, Michael was in the room at first. He left. Um, and then they were trying to get her to go to a hotel nearby. She was like, "I am not leaving this room until you leave." And they realized she wasn't changing her mind. So that was kind of that. And then someone opens the door, and they had their head down, and Julia thought this was Madison, and she goes, "What the hell?" Van had to tell her, "No, no, no, it's my sister Olivia." And she's like, "Oh." So Julia's all, like, "Nice to meet you," and all this type of stuff. And Olivia was a bitch. She was saying stuff to her, bringing up Lena, saying, Lena was his emergency contact. That's who's been running his business. Would you be able to run business? Just being real snippy to her. And then she's like, "Has Julia met Lena?" All this type of stuff. And she's like, "Well, I've heard a little bit from Van." And Livia's like, "Of course, he likes to keep secrets. So Julie was like, "Well, I'm gonna go get some coffee." And so when she left, Van's like, "Why are you being such a bitch to her?" And she's like, "She's a child. Why do you feel the need to be with a child? And he's like, "She's not a child." And, you know, she was just really rude. And it was like, "Why are you being so mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, the girl ain't did nothing to you. The girl that you're friends with shot your brother, like, and poisoned other people. Like, I'm sorry. Why are you treating the girl? She was a victim of the woman. Why would you treat her mean?" So then we find out what it's really about. She's afraid that Van is going to marry Julia and then take Brooklyn away from her. And Van says, "I have no intention of doing that." She's like, "I know about the private investigator that you sent around." He's like, "Yeah, but that's just to keep an eye on Brooklyn. That's it." And he tells her, "And I didn't know anything about Madison. I didn't know she had been committed. I didn't know any of that stuff because I wasn't keeping tabs on her." And it was like the fact that's why she came. It was like he got shot, but it was more so. And I'm not saying that's her only reason, because I do think him getting shot freaked her out. But it's almost like, I guess, when she saw Julia, it just made her feel like this girl is going to take possibly my niece away from me that I've been raising. It's just crazy. And so Julia came back in. She was a little bit better towards her. And he was saying how much he loved Julia and stuff like that. And she started talking about something that their grandmother had talked about, the red sin. And old Julia's like, "Yeah, I know about that, X, Y, and Z." And she was a lot better, but I'm still like, "Olivia, bitch." She really is. She's a damn bitch. Before Olivia leaves out, she does say to Julia, "Thank you for whatever you with, kind of bringing down his walls. Hopefully, you can bring him down some more when it comes to his family. And he's thinking in his head it'll be a hell of a long time. So she says, Van, give her my number. Hopefully, we can stay in contact, blah, blah. Olivia leaves, and then he's talking to Julie about Lena. And he tells her Lena is Madison's sister. She's like, please don't tell me they're twins. He's like, no. He said Lena's the older sister, you know, and she, of course, wanted to know if they used to mess around. And he says, yeah, we did, but we're better off as, friends. We figured that out a long time ago. She helps him to the bathroom, and while she's helping him, she lets him know, like, you're gonna have to start talking, like, period. And he was worried that she was gonna leave him because now he's not even gonna be worth the trouble, especially once he finds out everything. She finds out everything, I'm sorry. And I'm just like, he will get out of talking, you know and it worked for a little bit. Just a little bit, it did work, because then she didn't want him to feel like she was gonna leave him. I'm like, you little manipulative fucker. So we fast forward. It's been about 5 days. So for the first, I want to say 4 days that he was there, he was unconscious before Julia got there. So he's finally been able to eat, walk, and shit. So he should be pretty much close to going home. He's been telling Julia different information when it comes to Logan, Lena, and Madison. He has not told her about the baby Brooklyn yet. Remember, she still thinks that's just his niece. And so she comes and gets next to him. He's not hooked up to tubes anymore, so she can lay with him. And he tells the story of Brooklyn. So he blurted out that Brooklyn was his child. She goes, wait a minute. Brooklyn's 10. How long have Madison and Philip been married? He goes, 15, 16 years. He says, wait a minute. How is that your baby? Like, wait a minute. So he told her, Madison came to me. She thought that if Philip being a father would help him out, that it would help him, because he was having, this is another thing. You're having financial issues, but you want to bring a baby into the world, so that'll help him. How the fuck is that going to help him if y'all can't take care of the fucking kid? That is absolutely insane. You having a sister who's loaded. Lena got plenty money. Plenty of money. So if y'all needed help to try and conceive, you could have went to your damn sister and did it. But it's like, but you went to him. That's what's so fucked up. I don't feel like it's, oh, she's so mental. I mean, I think she has depression. She clearly probably is like a manic depressant. Yeah, I can give her that. But she had other options besides going to him. And I feel like Philip was mean to her. He could tell the way different times how she would say things when she lived there in that other house, that clearly he was mean to her. So I feel like you did that for two reasons. One, you wanted to fuck with Van again, and also you wanted to have that constant reminder, or that piece of Van. Well, three things. And you also wanted to fuck Philip in another way. That's what I think. He finishes telling the story, and she just kind of says, you know, sometimes good people do bad things, you know? And he was just happy she wasn't running out the door. Because that was a real fear that she was going to do that. So he they finished that, and then she did tell him, I am gonna need some time to like process. She did tell him that. And she also said to him, think you were wrong about Madison when you said that if she was in the same predicament with, getting the car stuck in a snowbank, that she would have just stayed there and died. He said, she's like, no, I don't think you're right, because what she did took planning. That's not somebody that gives up really easily to plan something out the way she did. And he was just kind of like, damn, maybe I'm wrong. Clearly the thought process that he had about it was just all off, you know. And then she did tell him, if you want a relationship with Brooklyn, you know, that's absolutely fine with me. I don't want you to think that that would be an issue for me, you know. And she told him, I wouldn't feel threatened if you gave that, yes, that is a child that you have with a with a psychopath. But it is what it is. She's still a child. It's gonna be a mind fuck for that child, I feel like. That's kind of crazy. But again, people make decisions and don't realize the ripple effect that it's gonna have on other people when you're pulling other people into your fuckery. You know? People just don't think like that. He gets released. They're back home. Julia is grateful. However, memories are sparked when they're here. um, on their way, actually, but let me back up a little bit. When they were leaving the hospital, like, he didn't want a wheelchair, didn't want a walker, a cane, none of that. Like, he wanted to be like the epitome of strength. Um, so they got to the kitchen, his ass was pooped. You know what I mean? Because it takes a lot out of him. He can only do so much. He's not at full strength. So she goes up to the third floor with Albert, and on their way up the stairs, she sees the spot where he was shot. But of course, you don't see anything because everything's been cleaned. It looks like nothing ever happened there. So when hers, you don't smell any smoke, nothing. Um, the paintings were all destroyed, so the room is just clean. She's talking to Albert, and then she says, how did you all, I guess they had they found out, they figured out, let me say it correctly, that she had been living in the house. And Albert says they found a makeshift bed there, wrappers of food, water bottles, and things like that. Then they start hearing voices. It's Van and Michael coming up the stairs, and she realized, oh my gosh, the weekend they had their fuck fest, that bitch was in the house, and she listened to everything. And she's starting to panic, but it's like, yeah, this is, again, it's a matter of not wanting to deal with stuff, or feeling like, okay, if we just get back home, we'll be fine. Nah, baby, that's when the healing starts, because you are going back to the scene of the crime. Even if the crime didn't happen there, you are back at home, you're with your thoughts. Now you have to really start to deal with this stuff. And she had a little mini freak out. um Albert and Michael left to give him some space. And, you know, the other thing that's a factor, Philip is still MIA. I'm wondering if she killed him. Like, what if Madison killed him? And that's the reason she needed him to pretend to be Philip one more time. Because he couldn't sign the papers. Because that's what she said. Not that he wouldn't. She said that he couldn't. So, I don't know. I'm wondering. I'm trying to figure this out. They start kissing, and she's just she said something about, the doctor said you couldn't, do certain stuff. He says it depends on my pain level, on what I can do. So then he asked her, did you bring your vibrator? So the next 2 days go by. They haven't been able to have sex, but they've been able to play with that vibrator, so it's still been nice. Julia's talking with Miss Paula and was thanking her for the decorations for what her and Margaret did. And Paula, of course, was like, of course, she was happy to do it. Asked her if she had been down to the cabin and stuff, and she hadn't. And she starts thinking about the fact that it was Madison who she saw when she thought she saw somebody outside that cabin, and it freaks her out on the inside again. And Paula let her know, like, all pain is not physical. You might need to talk to somebody, you know? And, you know, there's people on Ashland or even Bayfield, and she's like, I don't want to leave the house. And I'm thinking, bitch, they got virtual therapy. Like, you need to talk to somebody about the feelings that you are having. Like, that shit needs to be said out loud. You need to get it out, you know? And it's crazy because she's basically had 3 failed weddings in a month. And so she tells Paula, like, I don't care about a wedding. I just want to get married. We could just go down to the courthouse and that's good. And Vicky had just told her, you know, let me know, give me a date and I'll try and come down. Um, so she goes to talk to Van. She's like, let me go talk to him about, you know, when we can possibly go ahead and get this done. So we switched to Van. He's working from home. He only goes into Ashland for like his doctor's appointments or whatever. He hasn't heard from his PI Rob in quite a while. And Michael comes in and tells him that the picture that was sent was an old picture that had Logan and Philip in it. So Philip technically has not been seen since he left freaking the McGrath's house. That picture was an old picture from a few days prior. So the PI was lying, talking about, oh, you know, that's, you know, he's back in San Antonio. I have confirmation and all this type of bullshit. All of that was a lie, which I kind of figured. Now it's just a matter of trying to figure out why the hell he lied at this point. Or if he's still alive. Like, it's just all a mystery at this at this point. His memory's going in and out, and that's freaking him out. He's not remembering everything. And he has a conversation with Michael. Michael tells him, give yourself time. You know? And he says, can you get me a report of the past couple weeks? He just wants to see it on paper to like help bring back those those gaps in his memory. And so before Michael leaves out, Michael does tell him the situation he was in. He was a cop in Chicago. He got shot and he wound up having to shoot somebody and killed them. And basically your brain can only take so much. And what it can't, it won't deal with until it's able to deal with it. Eventually it will, but until it can, it's not going to do it, you know? And so he's going to get that report for him so he can kind of look at some things and see if that'll help his memory. So then he gets a call from Lena and she lets him know, I wanted to tell you, like, I'm paying for Madison's legal counsel. He says that's fine. I would hope you would do that. She is your sister. You know what I'm saying? And she tells him she has some more information, but it's something she needs to tell him in person. And she says, besides, I think it's high time I meet Julia. She's already in Minneapolis and she is on her way to Wisconsin. Julia comes into his office. He tells her that Lena's coming the next day. And he was ready to fuck. So they wind up having a little quick session on the desk. And so afterwards, she's like, it's going to be kind of, you know, meeting somebody you used to fuck with, basically, you know? And he's just kind of like, you realize we aren't that way. Like, we realize that's not what we should be. We're better off as friends, period. And she's like, well, what if you would have never met me? Would you have fucked her? And he just shrugged. And it's just kind of like, don't act. That's a stupid question. If he had met you, he might have fucked her again. I mean, he wasn't with nobody. She ain't with nobody. So if they do so, they do so. You know? So she asked if she had a relationship with Brooklyn. He's like, it's not a close one. She knows that's her aunt, but that's kind of it, you know? Kind of a complicated little web they have. So Julia tells him that she's a little scared to meet her, you know? He, of course, is like, don't feel scared, Albert comes in and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll come back later. He's like, no, I want to have this conversation in front of Julia. So he tells Albert and Julia about him not being able to remember everything. And Julia was like, have you talked to the doctor? He said, not yet. And he wanted Albert to go through and tell him everything that he saw and heard that day with Madison. And so Albert told him what he saw. It wasn't a terrible amount because, of course, he was worried about the smoke. So he didn't hear the part where she said, well, I'm sorry, where she said about him pretending to be Philip and all that type of stuff. He didn't hear all that. Um, Julia then told him that she had gotten a call from a detective while she was at her parents'. And Albert was like, that's weird because we all talked to them here in Ashland. They said they'll just come back for more information from you, you know, when you got back. So then they're like, well, who was she talking to? I'm thinking it was probably Philip or somebody Philip knew, but Philip is tied up in that shit some kind of way, trying to figure out what she remembered, you know? Like, if you remember enough to convict someone, you know what I mean? I think that's probably what was happening. And why would she not think that that's not an investigator? Like, why wouldn't a detective? Like, why would she think that's not one? I'm not gonna get mad at her for that one. So then, when Albert had came, Albert was very apologetic because he feels like he let them down, and there, he's like, if you all want to send me back to Chicago, I understand. And they're like, no, it's because of you that we're here. And so then Julia asked him questions she had never asked before, which was about his family. So we find out he's divorced. He has a child that lives with the mother in Florida, and this job gives him enough funds that he can visit the child pretty often. So Van lets him know, as long as you want to be here, you have a job here. Period. So Albert leaves, and then Julie and Van are talking, and he told her about the whole private eye Rob lying about where Philip was and the picture and all this type of stuff. And she said, but I thought he was back in Texas. And she's like, yeah, that's the problem. No idea where he is. And so he's like, he might have known about the PI because Olivia knew about him. So she's like, who else knew about the PI? And he's like, honestly, I don't think anyone else did. He asked her if she still had the card from the detective, because he's thinking too, Madison couldn't have been the one that dropped off the papers. It had to be someone else. So he's just trying to figure out what is what, because they never pursued the fact that the phone was pinging in Ironwood, Michigan, because they got the confirmation that his ass, Philip, was back in Texas. So, I don't know. They're just trying to line everything up. So, Julia is talking with Margaret. She, of course, does the whole I'm sorry again thing. Margaret's like, it's not your fault. That was Madison. She's the crazy one. They get to talking, and she tells her how, Madison was the one that was working at the shop and all this type of stuff. And Margaret was wondering, like, you know, how did she, let me say it correctly. Julia was wondering, like, when Madison was here, like, Did she walk the grounds a lot? And she's like, yeah, she did. Like, but we knew something was wrong with her because it's like, even when she seemed happy, she wasn't happy, you know? So she pulls out the card from that state trooper and it had like this women's support center information on the back of it. And they like help women find jobs and stuff like that. And she started wondering, like, I wonder if that was how Madison was able to get a job at that shop, you know? And she's just trying to, answer different questions. And so then she goes and looks at her text messages and she sees where Vicky texts her and said she's coming in that night. And she's like, I guess we're gonna have some company. It won't be a big wedding, but you know they're gonna go ahead and get this thing done because she's tired of not being Mrs. Sherman. So she goes to tell Van, but Van's yelling on the phone with Oscar Fields, the attorney. He's like, I didn't authorize that. And she wasn't really paying attention to everything, which I would think after everything you've been through, you would pay attention when you hear him fucking yelling. But no, she likes to stay in La La Land. She starts thinking about the autobiography and how she just doesn't want to keep it to just his business accolades. She wants it to be about all of him, you know? So eventually she goes in and she tells him Vicky's coming in that night. And we still have the marriage license. Pretty much you up for signing it, because he's like, I'm up for it, but we got to jump back into the real world with both feet. Because some shit starting to hit the fan. So Lena shows up. She of course was nervous. Um, she had asked him if Lena was beautiful. He of course was like, she's beautiful, but she's not as beautiful as you. Girl comes in. She's not beautiful. She is stunning. She exudes confidence, power. It just flows out of her. But again, I think because that is something that Julia wants to be so badly, it's in her, but she just doesn't always, you know, pull from it. You're gonna go towards those attributes, more so than anything else. But she can very much tell the difference between Madison and Lena. Like, Madison's got the blonde hair. Lena's taller, has auburn hair. Just completely, they're opposites, basically. And Lena was like upfront, off the rip, you know. Did he tell you our history? You know, she says, yes, he told me. So, we know each other in the biblical way. And she said something about Logan, and Julie was like, yeah, I know. She's like, okay, good. We got that unpleasant stuff out of the way. So she's like, can I get a drink? So Van goes, what? Like, what? He gets her a drink, but then he's like, what the fuck did you do? So then Julia's looking at Van like, why are you talking to her like that? What's happened? Well, Julia's parents' assets are frozen. The investigation into the will has pumped up a little bit, and they are being investigated for fraud. So the last will and testament, he was telling her, like, he had been researching it the morning of their wedding. He got some information uh showing that 2 years ago, the guy that did that will, Stephen McCook, apparently died from some undiagnosed heart issue. Now that information with the heart issue, old girl got, but he just found out about the guy's name. Van did. He had gotten that information the morning of their last wedding. So as they're talking, Julia realizes Lena's ass is Aphrodite. So Lena says, she uses shell companies when she wants to move incognito. And Julia's like, well, why would you want to do that? Like, what was your interest in Wade? Basically, she said, I did that to fuck with Van, you know. So they're getting to talking, and she starts to defending Skylar. Because, when they talk about the Butlers, they loop everybody in. She's like, but Skylar didn't know what his parents were doing, you know. we really got roped into this bullshit, but we didn't know everything that was behind it. And like he shouldn't pay for what they did. She's like, besides, he's got a kid on the way. He did me wrong. I know that, but he shouldn't suffer anymore for it. Now I will say that makes her a bigger person, because I honestly be like, I don't give a fuck about your life. That would be my attitude, okay? But she at least thought, I don't want you hurt or nothing like that, but I just don't want to deal with you. But it's the idea. I will say she is a very good person, for the mere fact that she still didn't want the blowback to fall on him and his kid. Um, I will commend her for that, because again, I wouldn't have gave a shit. I wouldn't try and destroy you. I wouldn't, go out of my way to try and do something to you. But bitch, if it happened, that's your bullshit. I don't fuck with you. That would be my attitude. Just off rip. So Lena's like, how much do you care about what happens to him? And she's like, you all destroy stuff, but yet you can spare certain people. And Lena says, it's not impossible. So Lena asked them, what did she say? Hold on. She didn't ask them. She was telling them what she had did. She sold 10, I think it was 10 shares of Wade. And that's what had pissed Van off, because that's not what he wanted her to do. Well, she was done talking for a moment. She's like, I'm starving. Let's eat. Because they were about to eat the food that Miss Mahan had made. So then they talk some more. And then Van and Lena are going to go off and talk about Sherman and Madison. And then Julia was like, just let me know about Wade. So then Lena tells her that, again, everything with her parents is frozen. They can't sell anything. And Julia, of course, is trying to figure out who's going to benefit from that. And she says, well, you know. So they're going to get married the next day at the house. Lena is staying in Ashland at a hotel. Julia did offer her, we have plenty of room here. You're more than welcome. And it did warm Lena's heart that she offered that to her. And she told her, maybe you can stand next to Van. I'm going to have my best friend. He should have someone to stand with him too. Van and Lena go in Van's office. And he, of course, what the fuck did you do? And why did you do it? So she sold 10% of his stock to Aphrodite. So now she has like a controlling share. Well, by her doing that, the Butlers ran scared, because it looked like, and I think she also sold some kind of way, she did something on Aphrodite too. So it made them, wonder about an offer. So the Butlers came to Aphrodite to try and negotiate. She offered 25 cents, I want to say, on the dollar or something like that. Something low. And the big issue is that Marlon, Gwen, his wife, and Logan's ass, they're being investigated by the SEC. So they all are invested in Biogen, the company that has an Alzheimer's drug that's already approved. Okay? So they're thinking that Biogen is the company that are behind the SPACs, that's trying to take Wade down so they can destroy the research. And so she tells him a little birdie might have tipped off the SEC about their investments, the Butlers. And so when the SEC comes around, guess what? People don't really want to fuck with you, because you've got issues, and if they've got anything they're hiding, they want to distance themselves from you, because they don't need their shit coming to light either. So Marlon winds up reaching out to Aphrodite again, asking to sell 75 cents on the dollar. So I think the final was like 50 cents on the dollar, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, she got it down to 30 cents on the dollar. And the only thing left is for them to sign. So that has now gotten the Butlers out of Wade. So right now, because the value of the stock is kind of low, the shares are not worth that much. But they are going to be worth a hefty penny later. Okay? It's just this is the nature of the business right now. So she hasn't done anything wrong. Okay? She's just, here's the thing. She wants to get back at those Butler people. And so again, because of how he feels about Julia wanting the company to thrive for her, I think he was going to sidestep some things for that purpose. And she was trying to, and old Lena was just like, we're still going to get their asses and she's still going to be successful. Like, we just got to work it another way. So if Biogen is behind those SPACs, then this is even bigger because now we know that they've gotten that information about Wade's research. Somebody's been giving that to him, aka insider information, which is illegal. Um, and then we also find out that Philip put old girl Madison under a conservatorship once he got her committed. So it's a huge battle on Lena's part to even try and help her sister because of the bullshit. Because technically, Philip's over her, and no one can find him. I think he did. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm starting to think. So then we switch back to Julia. Vicky's arrived. She's so excited. They have wine. They talk. She gives her the lowdown on Lena, and Vicky gives her the lowdown on what's popping back home. So apparently, Beth and Skylar have gotten married. Went down to the Justice of the Peace, and they got married. They're living in the house that him and Julia were supposed that they built. And Julia's like, listen, I just want my cut of it. That's it. Give me the value of what of it, and I could care less. She's like, other than that, I wish him well. Also, Beth was telling Vicky that there's some issues with the SEC, that Marlon and her parents, that their let me say it correctly, Skylar's parents and her parents got into a big blow up, and that it's all kind of stuff. So then Van comes in with Lena. Introductions are made. Julie wants an update on Wade. Lena's like, Van will fill you in. She's like, I'm gonna go to the hotel and then I'll see you guys tomorrow. They have their lovemaking session. Van and Julia. He of course is like, this will be my last night making love to my fiance. You'll be my wife tomorrow. And she's just kind of like, let's not jinx it, because like too much stuff has happened. So after they're done, she's ready to know about Wade, okay? And she tells him the little information that she had gotten from Vicky, and so he tells her the plan of what Lena has done and how Lena is now involved. Um, Again, we already know the Butlers don't know that Aphrodite's Lena, and what they've done is she's gonna put herself forefront, and she's gonna have Aphrodite sell to her, and then they'll know that Lena is involved. So they're doing a little back way to it. Um, so with Lena, when Aphrodite sold to Lena, that's the part that scared off the Butlers. Like, oh shoot, Aphrodite's like, people are selling, we gotta get out, we gotta get out. That was smart though. It was really smart. Um, so she of course is trying to make out, sense of, what's going on with her parents, and she's like, they can't do anything, like their stuff is stuck right now. But she's like, I need to find out their secrets. She needs to know what's going on because she knows they're hiding something. She just don't know what. And I'm like, girl, I'm right there with you. I need to know. So the next morning they have their muffins and coffee, and Vicky and the attorney Oscar Field comes in. She hasn't seen Oscar since her interview. So she says, of course, to him, it's nice to see him again or whatever. He's giving the lowdown. He tells them, listen, don't volunteer too much information because, the patrol, I think the state patrol and the detective from Ashland, they're coming by today for some questioning. I say a hell of a way to start off a wedding day, but you know what? Their wedding days have been so fucked up. This is the least crazy. So he's just like, just don't give them too much information. They ask you a question, you give it to them. She, of course, is like, but we're telling the truth. We're the victims. And it's like, yeah, but it's not about that. They've gotten a little bit more information. Um, the mere fact that the PI and Philip are missing is not a coincidence. It's odd. There's something up with this. They also found out Philip went and visited Madison on the 20th of December. Van and Julia's engagement announcement was done on the 23rd of December, and that is the same day that Madison was released. There was a sizable amount donated to, I think it's called a 529 for Brooklyn. And that makes me wonder if Lena is behind this. I'm like, is that what's going on? Like, I don't know. I'm just so confused. I'm just trying to figure this crap out. So then Officer Lawson shows up. They talk to him, tell him everything. Same thing when the patrol officers came in. Um, they are going to try and work together, the two of them, because it would help everyone if they just cooperated, with this investigation. Um, they told them, of course, about the private investigator being missing. Um, the sister having a child, like they told everything. They kind of did the opposite of what what the attorney told them to do. So Officer Detective Lawson, he wants all the numbers for everybody, so he can reach out to them. So he gets them that information, and I think Van was like, the butlers are involved some kind of way. Tell them about Logan. They told everything. Julia told them about someone calling her in Chicago doing the interview, and they were like, we don't do that. Like, we were gonna have the Chicago police come to your parents' house, where you were, but you'd already left, so we didn't do that. So he's like, whoever you talked to on the phone, it was not an officer. Margaret and Paula come. Paula has a surprise for her. She told her about, with her and her husband Bruce, they were married for 43 years. They had their ups, their downs. Um, and they were able to withstand. And she basically was like, the sun always shines again, and she wants to give her something that's about a half a century old. She gave her her beautiful gown, and it was, her wedding dress, and she thought that was so sweet that she was giving something from her heart. It just meant the world to Julia. And Miss Paula was like, listen, if you don't want to wear it, it's okay. You can leave it here. No hard feelings. She's like, oh, no, no, no. I want the dress. So before her and Van go upstairs, um, she's to get ready for the wedding. She tells him about Beth and Skylar getting married. And he says good for baby Skylar because that's his new nickname for Skylar. She doesn't like the nickname, but I think it's funny. So she goes upstairs, tries on the dress. It fits. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's not floor length, but it's perfect. She freaked out a little bit in the mirror when she went to put some water on her face because she was thinking about, um, is this really my happily ever after? Does that really exist? That type of thing. And then she started with the positive. It does exist. This is what I have, X, Y, and Z. And so girl is ready to go. So Van is in with Lena. She arrives. He pulls out his wedding bands and she's like, oh my gosh, you couldn't even get diamond crusted? Like, what is this? Are you, could you not afford it? He's like, of course I could afford it, but this is what she wanted. And I want her to have what she wants. Um, she tells him how proud she is of him, how different they are from 20 years ago, that they are in a place now where they can enjoy the fruits of their labor. They're now at the top of the food chain and they're just truly happy about it. And so the judge comes, they go downstairs, I think, Van and Lena, and he talks to Miss Paula because she was cooking them a wedding dinner, and he asked her if just the plain wedding march was what was going to be playing, and he's like, I got an idea because he didn't get a gift for Julia, but he's like, I got a surprise. We switch back to Julia. She's upstairs getting ready with Vicky. She's super happy. Vicky's super happy. Vicky lets her know, like, I am just so happy for you, and I'm happy that you're going to be taken care of. Everyone here is really like a family. She's like, and that makes me feel good, that you're not here by yourself. And she told her she's going to be coming back in the spring to visit. And Julia said, I'll be coming to Chicago to visit you. They go downstairs. Piano's playing. It's our boy Van playing the piano. She cried. She's like, oh my gosh, he's playing in front of people. And he, of course, was like, I'd do anything for you. They had the ceremony. It was really sweet. They signed the document and then they sat down to have their dinner. Uh, Miss Mahan, whenever I'm reading from Van's POV, I wind up saying Mrs. Mahan because that's what he calls her. She got them a 2-tier cake from Van's favorite bakery. So they did the whole cutting the cake thing. It was really sweet. And I love that they just really wanted to make this a special day for them. Um, they've been through so much. So it's like, give them something, that's nice. So they did that, and that was sweet. And it was intimate. It was with people that loved them and that supported them. And that's the absolute best thing. So while they're sitting there eating, Van just kind of looks around and he's got some thoughts that go through his mind. First of all, he no longer cares about doing the biography. We find out the reason he wanted to do it is because someone had put some information out there that he wanted to set the record straight. And he's realizing that these people around him, they've become their family. He's truly happy. And he doesn't care about other people. He genuinely doesn't. And that whole needing more and bigger, he feels settled. And I'm like, great. He can enjoy. He can really enjoy what he has. And I thought that was sweet. Everyone leaves. They go upstairs. They have their nice night. He has to undo all those buttons because it didn't have a zipper. He called her Mrs. Sherman. She loved it. They had a nice, good fuck. Lena comes over the next day. They're having breakfast and she kind of goes over how the shares have been purchased. The Butlers are no longer in. And as far as Skylar, she says as long as Wade is a business, he still has a job. They have no plans to oust him. So then they tell her about Biogen, and she knows that, they make the Alzheimer's drug and things like that. And Julia's like, but ours is different. It's supposed to help people. And they don't care about that. They just want their drug to be the predominant one, period. So Julia's like, well, what if there's a way that they could crush the research if there's a price we can put on that? And Lena's like, I like how your mind works. This might work out. So in a day or two, they're going to be going back to Chicago because they're calling an emergency board meeting so they can basically reassign people's jobs. Who's going to do what? Lena already said she'll just be on as a consultant. She doesn't want to do anything else. Julia called her parents, and they're like, we have something we need to tell you, but it needs to be in person. We can come to Ashland. She's like, I'll see you in Chicago. Like, I'll be there. Like, they tell her, everything's frozen and all this type of stuff when she tells them that, they're married, her and Van. She's like, but I'm married to Van. What's his is mine. So I'll be there. Um, I can't. I want to know what bomb they're gonna drop. But anyway, Van comes in, tells her Dimitri Lennox, who is someone Van has known for years in business. He's on the inside of the board of Biogen. And so basically, he's going to see if he can work an angle to try and see if they're willing to buy the research from Wade. Um, what they're hoping is that with what they can get for it, it will get them out of the red and into the black. So fingers crossed. Oh, and I also forgot, she gave her parents an ultimatum letting them know that, listen, she's married to Donovan. Either you accept it or you're not going to be in my life. I'd like for you to be here, but if you can't accept it, that's just how it's going to have to be. I was like, well, all right. They go to her mother's office. They're in Chicago to have this meeting. We find out that her mother was the one that filed the inquiry into the will. But the judge took it too far and made it an injunction. So the grandfather saw that all these mega companies could crush the smaller ones. So he thought making the company private, offering these stock options would secure the company in the long haul, but he was wrong. Um, but this is the bullshit. So the will that was filed is the one that Julia's parents filed. The real will was supposed to leave everything to one person. So the bullshit with the marriage and stuff, that was a previous will that the parents filed, but that wasn't the one that was supposed to be there. So Donovan's like, so who was he leaving everything to? Everything was going to go to Julia. He had completely written Anastasia and Greg out of that fucking will. So either way, this girl was supposed to get everything. Even if she married, she was like, with either will, she was supposed to get this company. But apparently the grandfather didn't want her to have to marry somebody she didn't want. He didn't trust his daughter and her husband because they fought him on what he was doing. They didn't agree with him. So his thing was, then you don't agree with what I'm doing, get the fuck out, right? So I was just like, y'all put this girl through all this bullshit and this was always supposed to be hers. But this is where people fuck up. And this is what happens when people doing stuff they ain't got no business. Instead of treating her correctly, because her thought was, okay, when they stuff gets unfrozen, I will give them at least a share so that way they can still be on the board. That's what she was going to do. But after she found out this bullshit, she was like, nope. Now, I will say the dad seems more remorseful about what happened. You know, he apologized profusely. He felt like they were doing the right thing. But I don't know if he felt like they were doing the right thing or Anastasia pushed his ass to think they were doing the right thing. I'm not sure. Okay. But she's pissed. You know, the fact that this was supposed to already be her shit, you know, that just, it irked her. So she told them this will be your last board meeting. She's like, it's still going to be family run, but it's going to be me and Van's family, you know? And I like that because they clearly, you were doing dirty behind her back for a long time and it didn't have to be that way. You know, it really didn't. So after the meeting, they go in Marlon Butler's old office, Van and Julia, and she's scared. She's like, can I do this? You know, she's like, I'm gonna need a lot of help with this, you know, because this is a lot of stuff that goes on with, you know, running a company. And he's like, you can do it and you'll have help. You won't be by yourself. You won't be alone, you know? And then he gets a call from Mr. Lawson, the detectives in Ashland, the detective in Ashland. Lena calls the meeting. Logan Butler walks in. Skylar walked in later. No. I think Skylar walked in first. Lena sold him a share of Wade Pharmaceuticals so he could be in the meeting. And then Logan pops up, and we find out he's the one behind Green Sphere. And he's also MMT, that shell company that made that deposit into Philip's account as well as into that kid's account. Um, they do a vote of who will be the chairperson. They do a vote for treasurer, different stuff. I think they made Van the treasurer. Miss Rose, the older woman who was friends with Julia's grandparents, they brought her on as secretary for this one time until the next voting. She'll help transition. And then Skylar, he was voted for something, but he's basically going to be helping whoever the chairperson is. Um, Something like that. I just can't remember exactly the position. But he's going to be working with Julia. So they do the vote. Julia and Logan let out, this isn't right because, you know, Anna and Greg, they built this place and all this type of stuff. And the mom was giving her a lot of slack, all this type of stuff. But it didn't matter because they did the vote. She got the majority and she's the chairperson. Which is how it should have fucking been anyway, Just saying. That's how it should have been. So she starts talking about her plan with the insulin and stuff like that. Her mother's against it. She didn't care. She kept talking. Um, she went on and, after the meeting, Skylar came up to her, thanked her. He said, Lena sold me a share and all this type of stuff and thank you and all this. And she told him she was happy for him because, she congratulated him and Beth and all that. And then Van came up and he told her, okay, we got to go. And she's like, well, let's see my parents before I go. She keeps trying when it comes to her parents. She really does. She keeps trying. They, one more so than the other. The mama really shits on her, but it's just like, good grief. So after the meeting, Van had gotten a message that they had found his PI. He was found dead in the UP. I don't know what the UP is, but that's where he was found. He's like, we got to get out of here. Well, unfortunately, Lena had leaked some information to the press, so there's like a ton of reporters outside wanting a statement. And he's like, okay, a couple minutes, but then we got to go. We got to get out of here. So Greg was like, got up and did the whole spiel about, we're honored to pass it on to the next generation and all this bull crap. And then while Julie was making a speech, Van got a text message from a restricted number that says, fuck you, I'm taking everything that you took from me. Then all of a sudden, this explosion and gunshots. He grabs Julia and buries his body on top of her. And when the sound stopped, he asked if she was hurt. She's like, no, I just have a 200-pound man on top of me. And he was trying to keep her from looking because her father got hurt. He's in a pool of blood. Anna, her mom, is like, please, please, I love you. Please, just don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Philip and, not Philip, Lord. Albert and Michael had Philip in custody, so they were able to stop his ass before he was able to do even more destruction. We fast forward to springtime. It's beautiful, stunning. We get an update on everything. Her father is okay. He had a few surgeries. He had a lot of rehab, but he's doing good. Her parents, they retire, but she keeps them on as consultants so she can pay them a yearly salary. The dad confessed to filing that fake will. But since they don't have the other will, They just pretty much got away with just a fine, and he can never hold a board position at that company. That's it. She doesn't think their relationship with her parents is ever going to be super great, but it is a lot better than what it used to be. They at least now treat her like an adult. Her mother even offers to give her advice. So I'm like, on that, on at least with that, for her, it's fucking decent. She did talk to Beth. They're never gonna be friends again, but they can be okay. Julia is pregnant, and while they're outside, they have a conversation, her and Van, and he tells her a little bit more. So what happened is Philip broke his keyboard when they were younger, and he would put on his earphones so no one else could hear it. But Philip, being a bitch, broke it, and the dad was like, "Good, you don't need to be playing that anyway. Boys play sports." The mom was always gone because all she cared about was her job. That's it. So she didn't care what happened. Well, we find out he left. He moved out when he was 12 or 13 years old. He moved in with Miss Henrietta Juniper. She was the woman that taught him to play the piano. So when she died, she also had a son that had died before he ever moved in. Um, Miss Henrietta died his senior year, and she left him everything she had. Now, it wasn't a massive amount of money, but it was enough to start up a business. Um, so here's my thing. I don't think that's enough for you to destroy a company and all the people within it. I am so sorry. I don't care how much you love piano. You destroyed people's livelihoods. Don't get it twisted. I know that company was doing dirty, right? I know that. But you could have came in and possibly saved it, and you came in and destroyed it just because your mother only cared about her job and your daddy wasn't shit. I don't know. I thought it was gonna be a more like massive abuse. I thought it was gonna be something like, okay, I get why you wanted to destroy everything that they had and around them, right? I want to understand it. That wasn't good enough for me. I was disappointed that that's what it was. This seemed like shit, like, oh my gosh. So after he talked about that, she was kind of concerned, being that she works a lot. He's like, "You are nothing like my mother. You are a loving human being. That is not going to be a problem with you." He was like, "Hell, I may want to be a stay-at-home dad." She's like, "We can negotiate." We fast forward to the following summer. Julia's had the baby. Baby's about 3 months old. His name is Henry. And her parents have visited a couple times, but she's always ready for them to leave when it's time for them to go. Miss Paula stays 3 nights a week and comes by every day to help with the baby. So she's kind of the unofficial other grandparent. Madison was competent enough to stand trial. However, they do have her in like a maximum security institution. Philip pled guilty, so he got a little lesser of time. He's still going to be in there for a long time, but that's that. Um, we don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm quite sure it'll be a good amount of time. Custody of Brooklyn was given to Olivia. They had a lot of wrangling to do because there was a protection order against Van for him not to be around Brooklyn. So they had to get that lifted. She's now 12. She's coming to the house. And when she gets there, she sees Van and she's like, "You look like my dad." And then she tilts her head and she says, "No, you don't. Your eyes are different." And it kind of startled him because normally people can't tell them apart. Only a couple people have been able to like tell them apart. She looks at his house. This house is big. And then she's like, "Okay, I'm ready to hold my little cousin." I'm like, "That's your half brother." So I'm like, this is going to be a mess. I wish they kind of had another book, even if it's just like a mini story with how that would pan out. I don't know. I would just want to know how that would happen. Skylar's doing really good too. He's been a great asset to the company. Her and Skylar are wonderful as friends. That's how it always should have been. And that is how it ends. I like this series, but I'm going to tell you something. Madison, I don't know if I buy into the idea that she was just. Mm, I don't know. Lena thinks that she was manipulated. I don't think I mentioned this. It's a lot when you're reading, okay? But Lena thinks that Philip manipulated her into this, and I think that's a possibility. But I also look at the fact that Van was holding on to all of this stuff, thinking this was the worst story to ever tell anybody. These are his deep dark secrets. I'm not saying they're the best, right? It's shitty behavior, but it's shitty behavior on everybody's part, right? First of all, Madison was fucking Van, but because Van wanted more and more and more, she preferred Philip. So you already was fucking Van, then you started fucking Philip. You married Philip. Now you got the simple life that you wanted, but it's not what you think it is. It's not that great, right? Because of who you picked. Every now and then, Van and Lena fucking, you know, and it seems like Philip wanted to kind of alienate her from her sister, and her sister didn't really fight too hard. Okay? So everybody has this horrible guilt about Madison, and I just kind of feel like, bitch, why? You know? Madison seems to be a have manic depression. I think she has that. Okay? But you actively went from one brother to the other one and then went back to the other one. I think she knew who it was that she fucked on her wedding day. She knew that was Van, and she wanted him. And I think she wanted a part of him. And her coming and, I'm sure Philip helped with the plan or whatever it was, or maybe he didn't. I don't know. I just don't feel that sorry for Madison, and I don't feel like she's a delicate flower. I think shit did not pan out the way she thought, and she saw this ability for Van to love somebody, not on this obsession stupid shit, but this genuine care for type of love that she never experienced with him. And that bitch said, oh, you capable of it, I want it. And I think that's what happened. And I don't feel sorry for her. Now, Julia, she was annoying. She was, and I get that she's young. She's like 23, 24, whatever. But she wanted to be in La La Land too much. And it just drove me a little crazy. It's like she didn't want to face realities, which is why I said I don't even know if it really would have made a difference if she knew all the information, because I feel like she still would have moved dumb anyway. But I did like it. I did like the books. Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. Give me some suggestions for some new series or even some standalones. Uh, if you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links are going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share, by the way. As always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.